He had practiced being invisible. Not deliberately at first. It happened over years. The way you learn to stand slightly to the side so photos look balanced. The way you offer help before it's asked, and don't linger for thanks. He married her mother when she was 12. Old enough to remember a different father, young enough to need rides, money, patience. He learned quickly that his role was not to replace anyone. He filled gaps. He fixed what broke. He paid for what made things smoother. Love, he thought, could be quiet and still count. At the wedding, he took his seat early, near the aisle but not too near. He adjusted his jacket and folded his hands, noticing the weight of the room, the anticipation, the layered happiness that made small talk feel ceremonial. He knew her biological father would walk her down the aisle. He had known that for years. He had told himself, honestly, that it was right. What he hadn't prepared for was how thoroughly he would disappear. She passed him on the way in. Close enough that he could smell her perfume. She didn't glance sideways. Not a nod, not a flicker of recognition. He felt a small, involuntary tightening in his chest, then let it go. Weddings were busy. People missed things. The ceremony unfolded with practiced ease. Vows spoken clearly. Laughter at the right moments. He clapped when others clapped, careful not to be early or late. When the music shifted and the father-daughter dance began, he watched her place her hand on her real dad's shoulder. The room softened. Phones lifted. Applause swelled at the end. He stood with everyone else. During the speech, she thanked her mother first, then her father. She spoke about sacrifices, about always being there. Names were said with confidence, as if naming made them truer. His name never came. He waited through the pauses, through the laughter, through the closing line that brought another wave of applause. Nothing. He felt it then, not anger, not even sadness exactly. More like a door closing somewhere inside him, gently, without slamming. A sense that a long-held assumption had expired. Between courses, memories surfaced without warning. Teaching her to drive in an empty parking lot, his voice steady while she panicked. Paying for braces without discussion. Sitting in the audience at school events where she scanned the room and smiled past him to wave at someone else. He had told himself that showing up was enough, even if being seen wasn't guaranteed. By the time dessert arrived, he stopped waiting. The reception thinned the way all parties do. Laughter softened. Shoes came off. Staff began clearing tables with the quiet efficiency of people who had done this many times before. The wedding transformed from an emotional event into a logistical one, and the shift felt abrupt but clarifying. She approached him near the end, holding a folded paper. Her smile was relaxed, familiar, almost fond. "Hey," she said, as if they'd just spoken an hour ago. He looked up, attentive but distant. She handed him the paper. "This is the final balance," she said. There were a few add-ons. He unfolded it slowly. Itemized costs, venue overtime, catering adjustments, numbers that made sense on their own. He noticed how calmly she stood there, how confidently the moment rested on an assumption neither of them had named. This, he realized, was the truest acknowledgement he'd received all day. He looked at the bill. Then at her. He didn't search her face for malice and didn't find any. There was no cruelty there, only expectation. The quiet certainty that he would do what he had always done. He folded the paper back along its crease. He stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't explain. He didn't hand the bill back or tear it, or make a scene that would ripple through the remaining guests. He walked toward the exit, his steps unhurried, his back straight. Behind him, he heard his name once, uncertainly. He didn't turn. Outside, the night air was cool. He stood for a moment on the steps, listening to the muted sounds of the venue, voices, clinking glass, confusion beginning to form. He felt unsettled, but not hollow. Lighter, somehow, in a way that surprised him. The calls came later. That night, the next morning. Messages framed as misunderstandings, as hurt feelings, as questions about timing and responsibility. He read them slowly. He didn't respond right away. When he finally did, days later, It was brief. He wished her well. He said he loved her. He said he wouldn't be covering the bill. The relationship didn't end in a dramatic rupture, it changed temperature. Conversations grew careful, then sparse. Holidays became shorter. Something essential had shifted, not in punishment, but in truth. He didn't tell himself a story where he was a hero. He knew love had been real on his side. He also knew now that obligation had been mistaken for permanence. Walking away that night hadn't been about revenge. It had been about refusing to continue a role that required erasure. About choosing, finally, to be present only where presence mattered. He still thought of her. He still hoped she was happy. But he no longer confused silence with acceptance, or payment with love. And that, he understood, would have consequences, some painful, some necessary. He lived with them, quietly and intact.